OE Live. Today, at our front table we have, first of all, is the moderator, Gabriel Garcia, the Secretary General of the Technical Private University of Loja, and Oscar Martínez, who's a professor at the Miguel Hernández University of Spain. Michael Roberts, Executive Director of the Darwin Group in the United States. Raúl Balcapexis, the inventor of the DNS. And Andrew Vea, Director of the La Salle Parque de la Innovación in Spain. Thank you. For the sake of time and for the people who are watching us on the internet, we're going to start 7 minutes late, but almost punctually. I would like to present the apology of Janet Bellis. She was supposed to moderate this, and she had an issue with her flight. She's the Chancellor of the University of Rosario in Colombia, and she should have been chairing this session. So I'd like to begin by introducing our first panelist of the afternoon. The issue is knowledge management, new trends in the internet, and I believe we have a truly deluxe panel. It's very seldom that we have a panel like this afternoon. So I'm very happy. I hope everybody hurries up, drinking their coffee, and they don't miss the afternoon's lectures because they're first rate. First of all, we have Oscar Martínez. He's an IT engineer and a doctor in telecommunication with the Valencia University in Spain. He currently works as a professor at the Miguel Hernández University, and he gives doctorate classes to students of telecommunications in the subjects of advanced distributed systems. He's doing his second doctorate with the Polytechnic University of Madrid in educational technology. He's a member of the IEEE, Education Science Side. It's a great honor to leave with you Oscar Martínez. Good afternoon to everybody. First of all, just as my previous colleagues have said, I'd like to thank the organization for the invitation to take part in this event as a speaker. And at the same time, in this special session of knowledge management and new internet trends. The title of this talk is The Current and Future Status of Internet Protocol Television Applied to the Educational Sector. Fundamentally, I'm going to look at this generically, the IPTV technologies, and concretely for the educational sector. So here's our table of contents. They're going to be following. It will be as follows. First, a brief introduction. Then we'll talk about the new trends of Internet, concretely, the technologies of IPTV. Then we'll talk about knowledge management, IPTV, in the educational realm, more directly related to the context of our conference. And then, after that, we'll discuss with e-learning services and applications in the educational field, learning through Internet using IPTV technology. And finally, we'll end with some conclusions. References, the idea, look at the future, course on the IPTV future course, scientifically applied to the field of knowledge and education, and works in progress. First of all, as an introduction, we all know and we've seen that over these last few years, virtual education is invading all levels of teaching, from the elementary, secondary, and higher education at all levels. So research in this field has been done regarding different components, pedagogically and technologically. The technological part has enabled us to improve the pedagogical aspects. The television has had and is having increasingly, it's becoming a new factor in the teaching and learning process. Just as up until now we've had other channels web-based, internet-based. The new technology, the next generation technologies, are predicting that television will play a very active role in teaching and learning processes leading the new technologies. So, the added value offered by IPTV processes is interactivity. So, the user, the customer, or in this case, in this context, the student, could play an active role, not just as a passive subject receiving contents without interacting. We're going to see during this session that IPTV enables the return channel to play an active role in the teaching and learning process. As the abbreviation says, television over internet. It's not the same to IPTV as web TV. Web TV is totally different. They're clearly different. Over these last few years, we've been able to see how television or television contents could be viewed over the web. However, the next generation webs that are coming in over the next few years will enable us to receive the audiovisual contents directly on televisions. So, we know that there are operators that allow the triple service of going broadband, telephony, and television. And there are other providers that have fourfold service that include receiving data mobilely on mobile phones. The fundamental changes that have been introduced on IPTV, as we've already pointed out, will make it possible for users to handle it. We'll see about it in a minute. So, also the contents that the viewer, the user, in this case the student, sees can be personalized as well, individualized through different profiles that will be pre-validated. Another major added value of IPTV technologies will make it possible to gauge the viewership much more accurately than has been done so far by estimates. So, knowing the degree of viewership, we can personalize the contents according to the audience we have at any given time. In the same way, content distributor companies and service providers are continually evaluating the implementation of IPTV services regarding different parameters. Some are the video standards used for broadcasting television and video on demand, which once again it's important to point out that this is not the same requirements as distributing audiovisual contents over the web. So it's a differentiating factor that content providers have to take into account. And secondly, the network technologies that are appropriate for broadcasting. We see that with the next generation network, with the new IPv6 multicast, will actively incorporate it and will once again come up as a hot topic, the distribution of multi-broadcasting contents. We're going to have technologies based on P2P, peer-to-peer, which can compete in the same IPTV context. But it's also important to see a formal definition of what IPTV means. According to the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, they briefly define, a shallow definition, how Internet Protocol television is a set of multimedia services such as television, video, audio, text, graphics, and data distributed by an IP network. Again, it would seem that this would give rise to some ambiguity with web TV and IPTV, but it's totally different, once again. Without getting into technical details, and because that's not the topic here, this is a general talk, the platform for distributing contents based on IPTV technologies. We would have at one end the contents. I don't know if we can see the pointer over here. Okay. And then next we'll have improperly encoded for distribution through a broadband IP-based network. Then they travel through the IP network, and then at the other end, we have a set-top box, which as well as giving internet services for the typical conventional PCs connected at home and IP telephone, we'd also have a connection with a conventional television that would receive the broadband contents. So in this way, the viewer, the television, becomes an IP plus device receiving multimedia contents over the internet. And the same way, then we have the return channel through which the user, the viewer, the student, will see how they can give return feedback to the applications that they're using at any given time. Similarly, a basic configuration, without getting into any details, we can see it again. We have the service provider, the content provider, the broadband IP network, and the home network. The client, the user, the student at any given time gets home and sees the contents through a set-top box. So what's connected becomes IP devices. Once we've introduced minimally the concept of IPTV technologies, now we're going to bring this down to a domain of knowledge that we know about education, because that's the topic of our conference. With the implementation of IPTV, complementary media to support learning comes up. T-learning. Now, all of these years we've been talking about e-learning, how this has been used on many occasions. But now we're beginning to look at topics called T-learning. The T, as I was saying, refers to television. Learning based on a device, which is the television. As you can see, in this simple diagram, we'd have redistribution of contents based on IP, the digital TV, a mobile part. We know in technologies that distribution on mobile networks is very important. And then what we had, what used to be e-learning, and now we have the topic called T-learning. So the dissemination of educational content that used to get out through the channels that we knew about, now we have a new opportunity, a new medium of disseminating, of broadcasting contents, which is T-learning, to get to the IP device, which is the conventional television. In this way, developing applications, developing technologies at all of these levels have new opportunities. So at the higher levels, we'd have that the purpose of T-learning would be to define front-end applications for access to the educational system from the television. We're beginning to develop new interfaces like what we had on the web so far, but at this point, totally navigable from a device, which is the television, in order to recover these contexts and interact with them. So, with the appearance of interactive digital TV, the television becomes a new channel, a new medium to broadcast these contents, especially for those people who can't attend in classroom studies, the normal classroom setting. This enables the user, the student, in the context we're talking about, to access educational services without being a mere spectator. By receiving the contents via IP, they have a return channel that at one point can customize the contents. They can participate in real time with the content they're receiving at any given time, and they can play a much more active role than we had in the viewer before, which was a passive role. Now we can customize the channels that can come in, but the return channel will provide the major added value. So the intention is at the distance, with the distance command, to interact and therefore be an active part of the learning and teaching process. So, since we've introduce IPTV technology, we are personalizing the interfaces into the field of education where the students can take part actively. Similarly, applications of T-learning will have to look for the best way to integrate educational systems in interactive television settings. The idea is to try to migrate e-learning applications and web interfaces to T-learning interfaces. So, they will be accessible. We'll see later on that the accessible part is very important through interactive digital television using IPTV technologies. The special characteristic of the television settings will be the return channel, the added value of being able to receive contents, but also with the return channel to customize what one is receiving at any given time, and at the same time to adapt the logic of the way the educational system works at this time to these new educational settings, the way they will come over the next coming years. Now then, we have to evaluate what technologies to use to develop these front-end interfaces. The International Consortium has promoted a standard in order to encourage the development of T-learning applications. There's a standard called MHP, which is Multimedia Home Platform, which is an API based on Java that makes it possible to develop all the applications that will perfectly well adapt to television commands based on interactive digital television. So we already have a standard to develop applications that will be able to assure that with the set-top box we can operate. So the students will begin interactively. This standard is basically already developed. There are applications that are underway, and it's very important to bear in mind that we have these standards in place. This API, as we see here, is at the top of the layers of application. Logically, and I insist, there's already set-top box devices that are integrated to virtual, Java-based virtual that are programmable with this. You can program them, charge them, connect them to the television through the proper way, and we can put these interfaces in to adapt them to the user who's using that device. So, implementing IPTV enables content managers to be able to know about the tastes and habits of their customers, precisely because they have a return channel. They have a way to measure their audience very accurately in real time to know exactly who is downloading, who's watching, each user at any given time. So they have the possibility to adapt their contents. So, if we think about the educational field, there are new methods, new media of teaching and learning to encourage by T-learning. Similarly, all educational objects that are currently being used via the web can be reused, adapting them to T-learning so that the same educational objects can reach this sort of devices that we're talking about through IPTV technologies. Precisely, with this return channel, we will have a recovery, or it will make it possible, a new field of research that's been operating for some years very successfully in the coming web generation, the semantic web. So the IPTV devices that have this return channel, the user, the student, can interact with these interfaces done with MHP through semantic engines. So they can download these contents based on semantics. So we see how the semantic web is a promising field along with IPTV. Also, there's ontologies already created by the International Consortium based on IPTV. So, if you have the ontologies, if you have the standards, the MHP norm, standard, the field is wide open for the development of interfaces to retrieve contents using IPTV technologies. In this way, we can evaluate the progress of a student at any given time. We can evaluate the contents that are of greatest interest to the student on the basis of this return channel that give us the opportunity to broadcast over IP. Similarly, in conclusion, we have to bear in mind many factors, some of them very important. And in this case, the interaction of IPTV technologies in the learning process should ensure a number of basic conditions. The use of IPTV requires skills to manage the T-learning interfaces. They must be interactive and functional for the user to use who's at the other end, the students. What does this mean? If that interface is not properly developed, they won't be used. So the technologies that give us access via IPTV will not be properly used. For this reason, we have new topics such as usability, accessibility, navigability are very important in developing new interfaces based on IPTV technology, because otherwise they will not be used anymore. Will become obsolete. So if we have a technology that offers great advantages, we'll see how in the ISO model of levels, every level has an important job to do, and all together they provide a new level of broadcasting contents in knowledge management. More conclusions that we're reaching, or that we will be able to reach when we have looked at all the contents about IPTV. Incorporating IPTV technologies applied to knowledge management show us evidence that it's a new way to support the teaching and learning process for distance learning. T-learning theories, e-learning provides experience that would be very valuable to move on to T-learning. And social networks are another very promising field with IPTV technologies. In fact, there are programs of research institutes such as MIT that are already working with social networking based on IPTV. As a proof of this, we have prototypes that are being developed of Facebook TV, YouTube, IPTV. Now on the market, there are some prototypes of television that one of the channels is YouTube, and all of the field of social networking has a very promising future in IPTV technologies. In closing, evidences or references of applications or developments or prior publications in the scientific field. Here is an example of the success of the projection, the prospects of IPTV. First of all, we have publications about T-learning applications. So as we see in 2006, the doctoral thesis in IPTV applied to this setting. And also there are publications in the scientific field about T-learning, taking advantage of the semantic network, as we said about in the layer of transporting data above all of the development of software that's being based on development of this sort of technology. Concretely, the semantic network. We're talking about technologies and interfaces that based on the semantics are all for IPTV. There are also projects funded by the European Union encouraging the use of IPTV. There are projects underway, as you can see in this list, that encourage the development of front-end applications. So the field of learning is education, is teaching itself. Other projects, as you can see below, are developed in South America. Even though they're financed by the European Union, there's one of them where it will not be IPTV, but it's the same idea to be able to enable this interactivity, and this is being done in Brazil. Not only did the European Union have financing of the countries in the southern cone of South America. Recent scientific events that promote IPTV technologies. We have this first one, which is the European Conference on Interactive TV and Video, is the 8th this year, and the topics that they point out is practically most or all of the ISO levels, the higher levels of interaction, the systems and technologies level, that's also included, media studies, and interactive studies and contents. Now, we can think that all the strategies are covered on the new technology based on IPTV. And in last month of June 2009, we organized, I had the opportunity to chair this international event, an international workshop on IPTV technologies. The plenary session, as you can see on the slide, was given by MIT. They are keenly interested in IPTV technologies. Also, there are publications, a special number, that will be printed in the Impact Journal about the technologies. There are some articles that are applications to the field of academics. So this is directly related to the topic of this conference, of this lecture, the use of IPTV applied to education. And this session, the new edition for 2010 that's underway, is being supported by many development agencies, many research institutes of great prestige, to create a second edition of this same event. As you can see here, we have the support of MIT, Cambridge, British Telecom, Microsoft Research Asia, because the Asian component is very well involved. Very prestigious American companies, European, such as France Telecom, Alcatel, Nokia, Ericsson, and Focus. All of them are very interested in using this kind of technology. And the works that's been presented is at any of the levels. At the application level, at the transportation, or at the network area, always based on IP technologies. And in closing, this last slide, which would like to convey that as new media appear, we have to reflect that the change is there. We don't have to miss new opportunities of broadcasting networks. If we've had broadcasting over the network with ubiquitous media, now new media are appearing that we have to take into account. Thank you.
I want to